Hey everyone, Richard from Digital Foundry here, and I'm joined for this particular video cast by my good friend and colleague, David Bearton.
Hello.
So here we go. Asus recently sent me two GTX 1080 Ti's. It's their new Strix design. Very, very fast and very, very cool. So what I wanted to do was to kind of SLI them and see what we could actually get out of them at the absolute limit. And what better test than 8K gaming? Now, Dell have recently released an 8K monitor, $5,000.
Yeah.
We aren't going to be able to show you that, but we can do kind of the next best thing. So this is our Panasonic 4K TV, and we can use NVIDIA's DSR technology to effectively double the pixel count in both directions. So a 4K screen essentially becomes an 8K screen. So it's like the equivalent of two screens in both directions. And in turn, that is the equivalent of 16 1080p screens. So get your head around that for a while. Now, we wanted to see whether we could actually get any modern game whatsoever to run at 60 frames per second at 8K. And yes, we've done it. So this is Metal Gear Solid 5, and it's running SLI on the two 1080 Ti's at 8K resolution. Yeah, well, let's take a look at that. Okay, so here we go. We're actually in game at this point, and yeah, we've got Riva Tuner Statistics Server running in there in the corner. You can see the two GPUs there, 99% utilization on both the memory and core clocks there, of course, and our CPU time. Now we're using a i7 6700K at 4.6 gigahertz, and I can assure you that CPU is not going to be the issue in these tests. So yeah, I mean, it's actually looking pretty good here. Now let's take a look at the settings. I'm not winding you up. This is indeed native 8K rendering, and there we go, 8192 by 4320. Now this is actually higher than the Dell monitor, which is 7680 pixels by 4320. So this is actually full 4K, not the Ultra HD consumer equivalent, and it is being DSR'd up to 4 times the equivalent resolution there, which is immense. And yeah, quick look at the settings here. We're able to save quite a few of the extra high settings in there to get our 60 frames per second. A couple of downgrades on shadows, ambient occlusion. I think that's kind of about it. We've even managed to retain the extra high quality textures. So that's pretty awesome. Now, Dave, let's take a look at Snake there. I mean, what do you reckon? I mean,
it does look incredible in terms of the image quality. You know, it's like you get this smooth, almost natural sort of lifelike image out of it with the downsampling that you don't get with a native 4K image. So that in itself is incredible to see.
Yeah, and the fact that it's so super smooth. I mean, the frame rate in this area is absolutely rock solid. And oops, got a bit of depth of field kicking in there, not so good. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of beautiful, and I kind of do wish that we actually had 4 4K screens to actually see the full native resolution here, because that would be immense. But I mean, kind of, well, I was going to say that we've proved the point here that 1080 SLI can run a modern game at 60, but well, here's the thing. I mean, I've done a fair bit of testing at this point, and what you will find is that you can lose frame rate at any point with sort of no real understanding of why it's happening. So let's see. I mean, one thing that I noticed here, I mean,
isn't it like there's a point where you shoot someone and the frame rate just nosedives?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to shoot this bloke here in the face, already down to the 40s, dropping into the 30s. As soon as another guy comes in, or another couple of guys, I mean, it's kind of holding up, but I've seen it down, oh, there we go, 30. Yeah. I've seen it go down as low as 10 frames per second. So, you know, we've kind of not really proven the point, really. We've kind of showed that maybe some games could. I mean, we can fiddle about with the settings, of course, but I spent an hour doing that this morning. The same thing happens no matter what you do. And when you're at this extreme resolution, I strongly suspect that we're just being hit by fill rate. I mean, the sheer amount of pixels. Resolution, I think, is going to be the kind of main failing point there. Okay, so here we are in Rise of the Tomb Raider. Now this is an interesting game because I couldn't actually get a consistent 60 frames per second on this one with a Titan X Pascal. Certainly not on above console settings. So I was really interested to see what we could do with SLI at 8K. And well, actually, it took a lot of individual granular setting adjustment, but we did manage to get a consistently sort of decent frame rate, 30-35 frames per second, and you'd be surprised at how long that actually took. But you know, it's kind of, you know, it's not bad at all, Dave. What do you reckon?
That's pretty impressive considering, you know, you were saying you couldn't get this running maxed out at 4K 60, and yet we're getting sort of 8K. This might be 30 frames per second, but console level performance with like 16 times the resolution.
Yeah, 16 times the resolution. Yeah, and yeah, it is pretty impressive stuff. And if we actually dip into the menus here, and the big kind of reduction that I really didn't want to make was actually the texture quality there. We can actually move that up to very high. Now you get a prompt here saying that you need a card with more than 4 gigs of RAM. Well, when you've got 8K resolution, you actually need to have a card with, I don't know, probably 16 gigs of RAM. This isn't really good enough, so yeah, we're going to have to leave that down on high. Yeah, anisotropic filtering there, drop that to 8x. This does actually have an impact on performance. It doesn't usually. Shadow quality, we've actually reduced that a bit. The sun soft shadows gone completely. Ambient occlusion is on. We can actually use HBAO plus with no real impact of performance there. Tessellation on, screen space reflections on. A lot of these high settings here are actually medium on console, so we're pretty much good to go there. We're actually running this game better than PS4 Pro settings in many cases, I would suspect, and nice. We're at 40 frames per second there, so not too bad at all. Not too bad at all. That's
very decent. And yeah. I guess if you, I noticed the frame rate is at uncapped here; it's going above 30. But if you use like the NVIDIA adaptive refresh, then getting 30 frames per second.
Yeah, you could lock to 30. Yeah,
a smooth frame rate. So that's not bad going, really.
Yeah, let's have a dip in. I mean, we always talk about the Village as the kind of stress test for Rise of the Tomb Raider. But you know, when you're operating at 8K resolution, your bottlenecks just come in a completely different variety of directions. And let's have a quick dip into that. Yeah, and actually what I found was that the Village kind of runs absolutely fine for some reason. Again, I think it's just the sheer pixel count that is the overall kind of limiting factor here. And yeah, basically what that does mean is stuff that, you know, like compute, tessellation, that kind of thing, geometry processing isn't really your bottleneck anymore. You're being held back by fill rate. So yeah, here we go. So yeah, we're actually, just dipped below 30 for a minute there. We have actually dropped beneath. So yeah, slightly heavier load there than the Syria stage we just left, but we are lurking around 30 frames per second. The interesting thing is that you just never know what you're going to get with 8K. So this was actually running for me at like 34 frames per second yesterday. For some reason, we seem to have lost some performance there. Yeah, you know, you just never know where your bottleneck is going to be, and it does seem to actually vary on a kind of load by load basis, really. So that's Rise of the Tomb Raider then. I mean, it is playable, it is at console level performance, and well, I wish we could have the 4K textures, but you know, the pixel quality, the artwork here, it just looks absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing. And this is actually obviously just super sampling. We aren't seeing the full 8K resolution here.
Yeah, so a lot of those details are sort of going missing in the process. But it'll be incredible to see when we do have the GPUs with enough VRAM to handle the ultra settings, just how well the artwork scales up. Because I know going from 1080p to 4K, a lot of the assets you get to see extra sort of high frequency detail there. And I imagine at 8K, with the very high quality textures, or the ultra textures rather, it'd look quite spectacular. I mean, it looks really good now, but just
we need more memory, and we need more render backends, I suspect, just to make it kind of work. I mean, we're pushing these two GPUs to breaking point here. Okay, so Crysis 3 next, and this game is what, vintage 2013 now, but it's still puts a really heavy load on GPUs, and it's not actually that great in terms of SLI scalability typically, so I was kind of curious to see what we could get here. So Dave, here we are, Crysis 3 in the jungle, 38 frames per second, just under 30 there. Yeah, not good. Well, you know, not too bad, could be worse. I mean, we are really pushing things here. If we actually go into the settings here, we were using kind of like a hybrid of high and very high. We actually got shadows there on very high, which is a completely insane use of GPU resources at 8K resolution. Still at 30, 31, it's kind of, whoa, what's going on there? Can you see that? I'm not sure that's supposed to be happening.
No.
Again, you know, 8K resolution, literally anything can happen at any point, you never know. And it all varies between game instances. I mean, we actually put in a fair amount of time to see what we could do with this game, and I haven't actually seen that before. So, yeah, I mean, we're kind of just...
We're on the edge, aren't we?
Yeah, we're on the edge.
Of playability. So there's definitely potential for it to drop below 30 once.
Yeah, I mean, we choose the jungle for
flying.
testing because it is like pretty much the biggest, most intensive area of the game. From a graphical perspective, yeah, 28, 26, whoa, not good at all. I didn't really go in expecting much from this because of the issues we get with SLI scalability on this one.
I was kind of a bit surprised that you're getting 30 anyway, with some of the settings at very high.
Yeah, I mean, you know, obviously, if we go into the settings and just go straight to system spec and go down to high, you know, we've instantly gained 10 frames per second there, and things are a lot nicer. So yeah, I mean, we're really pushing it.
That's a lot better. You could get a 30 FPS cap.
Yeah, there's not a massive difference between high and very high, so you could indeed get away with it there. But I think the thing that really helps matters, I mean, we are pixel bound, so if we go into graphics, take it down to 7K, which is like a 3.5 times 4K as opposed to 4 times 4K. It's going to have a bit of a think about it, as it always does. This is going to be kind of like a recurring theme where 7K, I mean, it's a revelatory increase in frame rate here. You know, use an adaptive sync display and you're good to go, really, I think, with this.
Yeah, this was yesterday when you first showed me this. This was the real WTF moment for me. I was like, "What, Crysis? 8K? Like almost 60?"
Yeah, I was kind of toying with you there by actually cheating by using 7K rather than 8K.
And that's, even so, you can imagine on an 8K display. You know, will you even notice the scaling between 7 and 8K?
Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing.
Probably not. And if you get sort of this kind of performance increase, I don't know, mate, it's probably going to be like a worthy trade-off, I guess. You know, you're not going to be sitting this close as we are to look at the pixels. But
so tell me, Dave, this is the question that the users are going to have, and I kind of agree with them. What is the point of making an 8K screen?
I guess, from my perspective, it's mainly going to be for people that are going to be using it for producing 4K content, you know, with workflow and stuff, so they can have different...
Okay.
You know, you can have the full screen on the display, but in terms of, from a consumer perspective, watching TV, playing games, unless you've got a massive, you know, over 100-inch screen, I can't see whether you'll get the benefit unless you're really, really close. And even now, looking at this, I can't see the pixel structure of this 4K screen. Yeah. So I'm kind of wondering, just, you know, what is it going to add? In terms of being able to see extra detail when you're seated a couple of feet away, you know, so...
Well, here's the thing. I think we've got to look sort of big picture here because, you know, when you look at Total Recall, the movie, they've got those big, you know, the screen is basically the wall. And that's kind of where I think that we're going to have to be moving in terms of higher resolutions to actually make the most of the resolution. I mean, I've got a 55-inch 4K screen at home, prefer 65, but you know, fundamentally that resolution is perfectly fine for 65-inch, and I think the only way you can actually make anything of it is to scale up, is to actually have a, you know, your wall is the TV. Another use I thought possibly for 8K VR.
Yeah, that's a good point, because I've noticed even when you have the VR screens, I think are they nearly 1440p?
Yeah, they're actually above actually no, they're slightly below 1440p, but wider, I believe.
Yeah, and you can see the screen door effect really obviously on there. So that's one aspect. In order to prove the immersion, it'd be good to get rid of that and get a seamless image.
Well, it's kind of, it's reasonable if at the moment, Crysis, this is our kind of benchmarking GPU run here. This is high settings. I kind of actually wish I'd dropped the shadows to medium there. Probably could have clawed back a bit of frame rate there. But, even if you were running this on an adaptive screen, FreeSync, G-Sync, I think we'd be good to go there. So, yeah, I mean, maybe 1080 Ti SLI isn't great for 8K, but 7K, it's looking pretty good. Okay, so next up we're going to take a look at Battlefield 1, the DICE game, 8K resolution. Naturally, now we've got the options menu here. Let's bring it up. Right, so yes, 8192 by 4320, 60 hertz essentially. Let's have a look at the settings here. Right, basically a mixture of ultra and medium.
I think you might actually be slightly above with the resolution
of course,
scale.
Yeah. We're on 110% there. Let's bring that down to 100%. Well, first of all, let's put everything up to ultra and see what happens. We'll leave the anti-aliasing as it is. I don't think we really need it. Might as well have HBAO. Let's have a look and see what we're doing here. This is a really taxing campaign level here. So let's take a look and see what we get. Whoa, 34, 33, yeah, not great, is it? No. But the image quality is...
Well, that's spectacular.
Yeah, I mean, they've got this physically based rendering system here which just looks spectacular at the best of times, and now we've basically given it an enormous amount of resolution, and it just really sort of pops, doesn't it?
It does. That's the first thing I noticed. It's everything just flies off the screen. It has that real three-dimensional look, which, I don't think I've seen... I remember seeing Battlefield looking like this at native 4K, quite like that,
but 28 frames per second we were at there. I'm pretty sure we can do better than that. Well, let's have a look at this, dip into the settings. I mean, here's the thing, right? What I was talking about earlier about how you've got different bottlenecks in different sort of scenarios at 8K. Post-process on its own, if I drop that down to medium, now we're at 29 frames per second. Okay. So let's bring that back out. There we go. Got up to
much better.
50 frames per second there, just by adjusting the post-processing downwards. So you might think that we could possibly, if one setting can make that much of a difference, maybe we can do something else elsewhere. Texture quality was actually quite low there. I'm going to leave that at high because if you look at the Viva Tuner statistics server there, we're basically at 10 gigs VRAM utilization there. I suppose we could bring effects down, lighting to high, possibly texture filtering, don't really need that at ultra. Mesh quality, we'll leave that. Terrain quality, we'll leave that. HBAO, we can go down to SSAO. So we're at 51 at the moment. Let's see where that takes us. And we're still at 51. So up 52, 53. But here's the thing, again, I think we've kind of reached a different bottleneck at this point. None of those things are actually causing the GPU's problems. It's the fact that raw pixel throughput is our limiting factor there. So what happens, thinking about it, what happens if we think about it? Go to drop the resolution to 7K, which did pretty well for us on Crysis.
See if it'll get us closer to 60.
And well, yeah, 60, there we go.
Nice.
Not too bad at all.
And does it stay at 60?
Well, probably not.
But this is holding up really well, actually.
I was actually going to, we did actually test this yesterday, and we could get a locked 60 in multiplayer at these settings. So at 7K though, at 8K we were dropping frames. There's kind of like less of a load on the GPU in the multiplayer.
I do remember that we were still sort of pixel throughput bound to an extent in multiplayer with the frame
8K
rate.
we were.
Yeah,
7K we were doing all right.
But no, this is holding up brilliantly. I mean,
yeah. So let's actually, I don't quite believe it. Let's just go back into the settings.
Have a look.
So at 7K, 7094 by 3741. That's 3.5 times native 4K resolution. And these are our settings. So texture quality high. Basically a mixture of high, medium and ultra. Let's try putting the texture quality up to ultra and see what happens.
VRAM usage.
Yeah, because we're at 7K now, we've got a bit more VRAM utilization available. And yeah, okay, so yeah, we're doing all right, Dave. Well, this is all right, isn't it?
I mean, this is great if you think about it.
Maybe we ought to be talking to display manufacturers about 7K screens rather than 8K screens. Yeah, this is all right. Whoops, I just blew myself up there. Well, I'm not going to say that was a tremendous success at 8K resolution, but I'd still think that you could get a pretty decent experience out of that. Okay, next up, we're going to take a look at Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, and this was a game that actually runs beautifully on PlayStation 4 Pro, and it's not running beautifully here, I think it's safe to say, and there's a very simple reason for that. Now, if we actually skip this cutscene here, which is running at about 20 frames per second, yeah, here we go. Are we actually going to get some gameplay now?
Yeah.
Now, as soon as we start gameplay, the frame rate goes up. We're actually back up to 30 now, but here's the thing. There's no SLI support on this. So we're running this at 8K at 28 frames per second at what I believe are ultra settings or very high settings or very close to it. And yeah, we're doing it with one card, which is not, you know, ideal. Let's dip into the advanced settings here.
Oh, we are, yeah.
Yeah, we are at 8K. I set this up earlier. You know, your light and shadows is pretty much as far, you know, as far as we can push them here. And post-process, you know, FXAA, which is fine for 8K. Everything is sort of on. All of the things are at maximum, basically. And, well, I mean, it's perfectly playable, but it's not Call of Duty.
No, I was going to say.
If you can run it at 60 hertz. But it does look phenomenal. But the problem is, of course, that, you know, possibly you could get much higher frame rates by dialing down some of the settings to sort of constant equivalence. We are maxed out here. But we don't have SLI. So, you know,
how far can you realistically push it?
We would need to look at sort of very good SLI scaling to get up to 60, to get 8K here. And yeah, it's not happening basically. Okay, so final game, Dave. We're going to be trying Forza Horizon 3 on PC here, and we actually did a pretty good video on the Titan X Pascal 4K 60 there. So here we go, GTX 1080 Ti, and yeah, we're kind of what, sort of 25, 30, yep, we're well above 30 now. It would be nice if we could actually see what the frame rate counter was doing, but the actual imagery looks pretty awesome from what I can see.
Yeah, it's kind of going around sort of mid-30s, frame rate wise. So
yeah.
It's stuck between.
Well, let's take a look at the settings here, because I'm sure we can do better with some minor tweakery video. Yep, we're confirming the 8K resolution there, full 8K 8192 by 4320, into the advanced settings. And basically a mixture of high and ultra here, skewing towards ultra. We've turned off MSAA because that would be nightmarish, I would imagine. I think we can actually possibly drop a couple of the things down to high, and let's have a quick look. Shadow quality is already on high. Motion blur, I can drop that a little bit. But isotropic filtering can go to 8x. And we've saved that. Now let's see how we get on in actual gameplay. It would be nice if it would. There we go. All right. So up to 37 frames per second now, which is good.
Yeah.
Full 8K. I mean, this is a beautiful, beautiful game. We're going to be moving. There is some kind of weird slowdown occasionally going on. It seems to be all right. I don't actually think it's... Oh, I'll tell you what it is. It's the driver assist slowing me down physically, as opposed to the renderer having any issues. So now we're going to move into this, into this forest bit, which, yeah,
it looks like there's a weird slowing thing
going
on that's not the car.
Yeah, you're right.
Like,
it is kind of weird, yeah.
It kind of reminds me of CPU slowdown you get on games that are not tied to frame rates. The logic will slow down.
We're definitely slowing down for sure here. Well, look, one thing we can do, let's go into the settings and set the 30 FPS cap, because I mean, we're, you know, there's no
just
real,
above it, aren't we? So
yeah, there's no real need to actually have it. There we go, frame rate at the top there.
Yeah,
30 frames.
see if that makes a difference.
Okay, is it going to let me play? Yes, I know my video preferences have been saved. I would very much like to play the game now.
That is one of the things I've noticed at 8K. Everything is a lot
Everything is slower. Yeah, I mean, it's the bottom line. Come on.
And
we are, and we're back in the room. Right.
Okay, let's see if
Let's
this
see
works.
if that helps. I mean, it looks amazing. That is still slowing down, not as badly, I don't think. It does look. I mean, this game does look phenomenal.
It does. The image quality is superb with the downsampling.
Yeah, even though we
Absolutely
don't have the
breathtaking.
MSAA, which we had to turn off just for sanity's sake. So, yeah, moving into a engine-driven cutscene here. So this is where we race this guy in the 4x4. We might actually become the 4x4 at this point. Let's have a look. 25 frames per second. No, it's not good.
Yeah.
Where are we? Back up to 30.
It's back up and it goes
okay.
back in. But it is holding up rather well with the 30 FPS cap now.
Yeah.
Those weird sort of slowdowns.
Yeah, and you know, it's kind of bizarre because we know that the Forza renderer is really highly optimized, and this is why we can do, you know, 8K at 30 frames per second. But, you know, a lot of people have issues with this game, and it's kind of bizarre. We actually had some glitches on the Radeon RX 570 there, which was running at 1080p, kind of not really sure what was going on there. But, well, you know, I think most of the slowdown issues we were having have gone, and it looks amazing, this game. It really does. Absolutely phenomenal. I was blown away by it at 4K, 8K, you know, pretty much awesome. Although, of course, we don't actually get to see the full 8K here.
No.
I mean, if you can imagine 1 pixel on the 4K screen here, the GPU is actually rendering 4 and then squeezing those 4 down into 1. Yeah, I've got a confession, Dave. I didn't tell you about this earlier, but this game doesn't support SLI.
Whoa. So what we're seeing here is on a single card.
Yeah, so one GTX 1080 Ti is giving us 8K 30 at those sort of mixture of high and ultra settings, which I think is, again, an endorsement of the optimization of that engine. And just to prove it, here is the second GTX 1080 Ti, the Asus model there.
Well, hands off to turn 10 there, you know.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, fascinating stuff, I think. I mean, well, what's the takeaway here? I mean, from my perspective, well, this took a lot longer than I thought it would take to do because everything crashed all the time. And there was a lot of weirdo settings that you know, kind of post-processing on Battlefield 1, sort of impacting things by 20 frames per second. Wasn't quite expecting that. I think the kind of takeaway is that I kind of do want an 8K screen, but it has to physically be 4 times this area. I'll just sit in front of it for the whole weekend and just sort of zone out, I think, and play games at native 8K. I think what surprised me is that 1080 Ti, it's a great card for 4K gaming up to about 60 frames per second. 2 of them actually providing 4 times the pixel count with, you know, I'd say that most of the kind of compromises we made to settings weren't that bad. I think the worst was dropping texture quality when we ran out of VRAM.
Yeah.
So I think you kind of do need to have more than 12 gigs of memory. The 1080 Ti's got 11 for some reason, but even 12 I don't think would be enough. I was looking at Watch Dogs and that was asking for 16 gigabytes at ultra settings. I would have shown you Watch Dogs, by the way, except you guessed it, it kept crashing all the time. Maybe it'd be different if we weren't using NVIDIA DSR, if we were actually using a native 8K display, but I don't think so. The amount of games that I've been playing recently where it has just 8K resolution, where it has just completely crashed. But it is sort of very nice to end the testing with an 8K game that just kind of worked without any real issues. That slowdown seems to have gone now. We've introduced the 30 frames per second cap, and the fact that we're able to get this incredible experience
with one card.
With one card.
I mean, that's yeah, that's really good. It's something that anyone could do if they have a GTX 1080 Ti. No need to mess around with LSI or SLI rather, or faff about with other settings.
I think there's a lot of mileage left in 4K, obviously. I mean, we've barely even scratched the surface of gaming at that particular resolution. But, you know, the fact that we are able to play at 8K, I mean, you know, let's just confirm. I'm not winding anyone up here. It is indeed 8K. Let's have a quick look in there. Yeah, there we go. And it isn't just 8K, it's the full fat 8K, not 7680 by 4320, but 8192. I think that's kind of could have actually helped us a bit if we actually were running at
the quad UHD rather than the
yeah, exactly.
standard.
I mean, I do think that we were fundamentally limited just by the amount of pixels we had to output in most cases. So yeah, but
in a way it's kind of an interesting view of the future, because 4K is kind of the standard now. So, you know, 4K 60 is going to be the target if you're a PC gamer, and I'm guessing 8K takes over like 4K's place previously when you had users having, you know, 1440p instead of 1080. They've, you know, going to move on to 4K, and then this is kind of the aspirational
yeah, I mean,
target.
I would be really surprised if we see much take up of 8K in the short term. I mean, we've kind of demonstrated that it's immensely hard to game with it and to get decent, consistently good results, whereas 4K 1080 Ti, you know, most games you'll be absolutely fine with it, and you get a great experience there. But it's taken us so long to get there. I remember when AMD did an event for the Hawaii cards, 290, 290X, they were saying those were 4K cards. I mean, those cards are kind of like GTX 970, 980 level, and you wouldn't consider those for 4K gaming in the here and now. So, you know, basically, that was an example of how pixel count, it outstripped the sort of progress of GPU technology, and it took us years to actually come up with GPU technology that could run 4K effectively. But, you know, 8K on a single card, it's all down to how well optimized the engine is.
And I guess there's sort of less of a need for it if you're sitting on a PC screen. As you were saying earlier, you know, if you want to have a massive, you know, above sort of 85-inch display, that's where kind of the usage is going to be. But
yeah, and what about projectors? Because you're after a 4K projector, aren't you?
Yeah, I mean, on projectors is kind of a different story, because the actual pixel fill is a lot higher. So you know the black grid in between the actual pixels is so much skinnier, and because the light is reflective off, even on a 1080p projector, you can get away with not seeing the pixel structure from something like 3 meters away on like a 100-inch screen, whereas 4K it's kind of almost invisible. So I imagine it's not as required for projectors. I think 4K will do the job nicely, but in terms of if you don't want a projector, you want to have I guess the future might be like a rollable OLED screen, then that's kind of
I think my
important.
point is that we need a huge amount of real estate to make the most of 8K.
Yeah.
Because, you know, this size screen, 4K is absolutely fine. And I do think that if we were going to go up to 8, we would literally need 4 times as much area. And then when you're in that sort of area, you're kind of thinking more about projectors at that point, I'd have thought, to really make the most of the area there, of the pixel count, because it's just insane. I
guess to put it into perspective, the old IMAX screens are 4K, and even then the kind of pixel structure is really smooth and invisible, so it's kind of, it begs the question, do you physically need it? It's great to achieve, but how much benefit we're going to get out of it? Obviously we haven't got a massive 8K display, so we can't really say if there's going to be other benefits besides resolution. The kind of, you know, like looking out of a window effect, you notice there's something different you can perceive, but you can't quite put your finger on it.
Right.
A bit like, you know, going from 60 to 120 FPS, I can't really see the extra smoothness, but there's just something about it that's a little different. You can't quite, you know.
It's kind of a bit more real. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
similar to the way the tank was popping on Battlefield 1 there. It just looked like nothing we'd never seen before on that game. Okay then, well, I think we're going to wrap it up there. Thanks for joining me on this one, Dave. Do like and subscribe to support what we do here at Digital Foundry, and do please consider supporting our Patreon, where you can access high quality downloads of everything that we do, and that includes this video, which you can get in full native 4K 60 frames per second. Not 8K unfortunately, but well, there we go. Okay, well, from me and from Dave, thanks for watching.